Those are the headlines for the hour, and we start this bulletin in Europe. And European and Western leaders have met on the sidelines of the G20 summit to discuss a response to US President Donald Trump's peace plan for Ukraine. The plan, which demands Ukraine accept key Russian terms, has been met with mixed reactions in Europe. While Trump's efforts to end the ongoing war were praised, many European leaders have found the terms in his proposal as unacceptable for Kyiv. Commenting on the plan, Polish President Karol Nawrocki has emphasized that any peace plan for Ukraine must be approved by Kyiv. This comes after the US signaled to Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky that his country should accept this US-drafted framework to end the war with Russia. The 28-point plan calls for Ukraine to surrender territory, accepts limits on its military, while also renouncing the ambitions to join NATO. Moreover, President Nawrocki emphasized that it was Ukraine and not Russia that was the victim of aggression. He has further stressed that peace cannot come at the expense of Russia achieving its strategic goals. Meanwhile, Russian President Vladimir Putin has said that the US plan could serve as a basis for peace, but Moscow may object to certain aspects of the draft, including the demand for its forces to withdraw from certain captured areas. Joining us now is Professor Veselin Popovsky. He is a professor and vice dean at Jindal Global Law School in New Delhi. Thank you very much for joining us, Professor Popovsky. We haven't spoken since this 28-point plan has been released. Tell me what you think of it. Of course, many critics are concerned that this plan echoes a lot of Moscow's sticking points. What are your thoughts on it?
Yeah, that's correct. It's really a Moscow plan, and that's why it's not going to work. It's controversial in itself. It starts by reaffirming Ukrainian sovereignty, but then it asks Ukraine to reduce its army, not to join NATO, to surrender territories. And half of those demands actually goes against the sovereignty of Ukraine. So it's a nonsense. Ukraine will not surrender its sovereignty. It will have support, and we see already, as you mentioned, Thomas, there is a lot of support from all European countries that met in G20 meeting in South Africa. And by the way, not only European countries. International law will not allow that to happen. Trump is thinking in a business transactional way. He thinks that this is between a seller and a buyer, and they can kind of adjust the price. Somebody may give up something. That's not a business transaction, and Donald Trump again and again fails to understand that at some point, but maybe next week he will come with something different. So I will think this plan is not going to work. We will forget about this next week, and there will be a new decision-making next week. There will be more meetings, and we understand that Zelensky will be in Switzerland meeting American officials. So there will be a lot of diplomacy going on, but still the President Zelensky willingness to talk with the Americans is something to welcome. The Europeans will also play a significant role in that. Everything that the Polish president said is absolutely correct. Zelensky said, we are happy to discuss, but it should be a dignified peace. And we don't see anything dignified in that proposal. And obviously Donald Trump, who changes his mind every day, if not every week. So I don't see a prospect for this to work at the moment. It will be kind of, they say a new peace plan, but that's actually a 19th century peace plan. At that time, the great powers were deciding the fate of the small countries, and it's definitely not what is going to work.
Yeah, and of course, and Professor, Donald Trump has obviously put a week-long deadline on this. Your thoughts on why is the US now reasserting pressure on Kyiv, given the previous statements made by Donald Trump as little as around a month ago, where Donald Trump even said that Ukraine could get all its territory back, and now it's saying that it should concede when it comes to Crimea and other territory, some territory which Russia hasn't even occupied yet. Yes, what were you
ridiculous, all of this. Again, Donald Trump is a hectic, erratic president. He wakes up with new ideas every day. And for that matter, sometimes he's changing his mind, and he thinks that pressuring Ukraine now will work. He gives yet another ultimatum by Thanksgiving next Thursday. Ukraine should accept that. Obviously, this is not going to work. Obviously, after a couple of conversations with the British and the French and the others, he will again change his mind. I wouldn't comment on Donald Trump because it's impossible. Donald Trump doesn't know what will happen tomorrow and what his talks will be tomorrow. So how can I comment on something that even Donald Trump doesn't know? And yes, because of that pressure, he wants to get something done. And he's definitely very irritated that, 10.5 months since his presidency, that conflict remains as serious. The other conflicts have been, we see progress everywhere else, but not in Russia, Ukraine, and that's what makes Donald Trump very angry.
But President Popovsky, of course this comes as Russia is reportedly advancing on the battlefield, gaining more and more territory. Is Donald Trump seemingly rewarding that aggression? We've seen countless an uptake in airstrikes on Kyiv as well. What are your thoughts on how he's acting?
Not really on the battlefield, Thomas. There are strikes on the big cities, and civilian casualties are reported almost daily, and that's very serious. But on the battlefield, not at all. I usually use the comparison with the snail, the slowest animal on the world. If that snail left Bryansk in February 2022, it would have been in Berlin already. So that's the speed of the Russian army. Snail will walk faster than the Russian soldiers. Absolutely no advance. They are claiming every day some territorial gains. But if we look longer term, for the last, let's say, 16 months, it's very minimal. It's several kilometers here, a couple of villages there. They are still outside Kupiansk and Pokrovsk, which they claim 6-7 times they already captured. And all those 6-7 times it happened not to be verified. Again, it's a joke how the Russian army is advancing, losing, by the way, a lot of soldiers during those attacks, and this is not going to work. And yeah, the battlefield is frozen. There is not much movement either way. And that's why it's very interesting why J.D. Vance says we cannot supply Ukraine continuously with money and weapons because Ukraine will not win the war. But Russia is not winning anything also. And I think the Russian economy will collapse much faster than the European support for Ukraine. Again, that's not a calculation that J.D. Vance makes correct.
Yes. Professor Popovsky, do stay with us as we have further updates coming out of the east of the European continent. Ukraine has confirmed the return of 31 civilians who had been imprisoned in Belarus. These men and women were sentenced to terms ranging from 2 to 11 years. The return was coordinated by Kyiv's Prisoner Exchange Committee, which said the release was part of efforts to bring Ukrainians home safely. Ukraine expressed special gratitude to the United States and President Donald Trump, hailing their role in facilitating the release of both civilians and military personnel from Belarus and Russia, marking a significant diplomatic achievement. Professor Popovsky, what's your analysis on the new diplomatic ties between Belarus and the United States?
Congratulate on this one the American diplomats, the ambassador in Minsk, and everybody else who negotiated with Belarus the release of those prisoners. Obviously, these are innocent people, as you said. They should go home, should have been done already. Belarus has no point to detain and to keep them for so long. So finally, with pressure from the United States, as you said, Belarus released those prisoners. They will go home, reunite with their families. Obviously, a very good news. So yes, that suggests exactly that American diplomacy has potential to achieve a lot, and obviously a lot of civil officers, civil service, diplomats are doing the right thing, and we should praise them for that. Well, the problem is still, as I mentioned earlier, on the top, when the president is erratic and doesn't know what to do tomorrow. That's where the problem comes. But the second rank officials are pretty much competent people, and they deliver, as we see in that excellent deal with Belarus to return the prisoners back home.
Yes, Professor Popowski, thank you very much for joining us here on NewsX World. It's always a pleasure to talk to you. We now move on, and China has called for strict international